Ashley, back to the show. I'm so excited you're here. Thank you for being
Hello.
today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always, it's never work. This is always just such an easy, fun thing to do. So thanks
I
for having
know.
me.
I love it. So in contrast to our former interviews on the show, which are all focused on CBD, we've got an episode on CBD and an episode on CBD in the body. Today we are focusing, and actually I brought my product over here to show off on the CBG. And I would love to just jump right in. These are, I've started to take the CBG, and I've noticed that the taste and the color is almost a little richer than the plain CBD. Let's just start right off the bat with what even is CBG.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the president and co-founder of Elmore Mountain Therapeutics, Ashley Reynolds. Started the company in 2017, have specifically focused on the one cannabinoid CBD and THC. And have really dorked out about everything there has to do with those two cannabinoids and what they can do, what we can sell, what we can use for therapeutic benefit. And knowing full well that there are over 200 cannabinoids in this beautiful plant, the cannabis plant. 200 that we know of. And we focus the most, or used to focus the most on THC. My company focused the most on CBD, which definitely seems way more mainstream over the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And now to throw another sort of monkey wrench into things, we have this CBG, which we had always seen little trace amounts here and there of this cannabinoid. But I'm going to get to why we don't see it typically in our CBD full spectrum products. So CBG stands for cannabigerol. So cannabigerol.
Okay.
As opposed to cannabidiol.
Right.
That's so fun to say.
Yeah, cannabidiol is CBD.
Mm-hmm. And cannabigerol is CBG.
Cannabigerol. Okay.
Doesn't roll off the tongue as much, but I think it's also because we just don't say it as much as we do the others. So
yeah, I used to think endocannabinoid didn't roll off the tongue very well, but now I'm like,
look at you now, or entourage, right? So what's really cool about CBG is that it, in the acid form, CBGA, mm-hmm. is what the precursor is to the cannabinoids that we're most familiar with, CBD and THC. So in the medical world, it's really referred to as the mother cannabinoid. So here we have this beautiful plant. It is in veg mode, right? So it has just the leaves, and then it goes into flower mode when it starts making those beautiful colas. The flower's first compound that it makes that's a phytocannabinoid is CBGA, the acid form, which then quickly turns into CBG. So it loses that tail, loses that carbon tail when it's exposed to light or heat. Okay. And so what's interesting about that point is that the CBG is very elusive because it's also hard to harness, which really from a point of view from the powerful mother beings that we are, that power is hard to harness in us. Mm-hmm. So again, I just love the never ending assimilation that I find between mother cannabis and human mother. It just never ceases to amaze me. Yeah. So anywho, CBG, which, we find in the cannabis plant, but isn't typically the desired cannabinoid that we're after, then matures into CBD-A and THC-A, which when it's then decarboxylated, meaning we lose the tail because of heat or light, mm-hmm. And then we get CBD and THC. So that's in a nutshell what CBG, the cannabinoid, is.
So is this something that it's pre-flower then, or when the flower is sort of matured and like ready for harvest when we would normally be harvesting flower for CBD or cannabis, for, you know, either the THC or CBD. This is before that point, right?
Correct, but it is happening in the flower. So what's really interesting is that if you're trying to harvest this, so you brought up a really good point about the harvest aspect, is that you basically have to harvest the crop for CBG. Right. Because once you let it go past a point of maturation, it won't have any CBG in it anymore. It'll all be CBD or THC or other cannabinoids. But to really simplify it, we're just going to talk about those 3 cannabinoids today. And that's so crazy. So, well, that's one form, is growing a strain that's high in CBG that you then harvest early. Right. That means, and harvesting early means that, you know, you're not as susceptible to the THC thresholds, because we know that that maturation process happens throughout the life cycle of the plant, closer to like your traditional harvest. Mm-hmm. Or you grow a field that is very low in CBG, but then you have to yield a ton of flower to make a high concentrated product. The product that we put out, what you have, that tincture, and then what we then put into the balm to make the CBG balm, that was not something we were looking for in our crops. That was something that came from a farm that they were obviously growing CBD rich percentage plants. So I also went into the idea of CBG because of its elusiveness, because it's really volatile. It's really hard to keep in that state before it matures. And I didn't see any ratios that were like very attractive to me, like seeing 1-to-1 ratios of CBG to CBD. I didn't really understand like which cannabinoid was doing the work when it's a 1-to-1. And I'm excited to put that out into the universe and hopefully get some feedback once we post this to the world, because I don't see any therapeutic benefit to a 1-to-1 CBG to CBD. I see it in CBD to THC because those are very different, very, you know, one non-psychoactive, one psychoactive cannabinoid. Like I see that. Right. So I was really like, I don't really understand what's so great about CBG. Why are people going crazy about it out west? Like, I don't understand these ratios. They don't really make sense. I don't see how they make any like therapeutic sense. And then I saw this plant and we tested it and retested it. And we were like, what the heck is this 7-to-1 ratio? And when I say 7-to-1, you guys, that means that there is 7 parts CBG to 1 part CBD in this particular product. Right. Which, like, I personally have never seen that ratio. I've also never seen that ratio made and not like scientifically made. Like you can add isolate of these cannabinoids. I was just going to ask if that's from what you tested out of the extract, not from adding different isolates together. Right. So that came from a single source plant or single source farm, but came from a plant, made that ratio. And it's full spectrum. So even though we weren't looking for THC in the product, because this particular plant was harvested, or this particular crop was harvested for the purpose of CBG, it still had THC in it. And so our THC threshold is also like almost 2.3% on this as well. So it's a unicorn. This ratio is a unicorn. And to be honest, everyone, like when we say it's limited release, like we don't have an infinite amount of it. When it's gone, it's gone. And I don't know that we'll ever be able, hopefully we'll find that ratio again sometime. But right now, like the biggest promise we have is seed that's going to go into the ground for spring of next year. So like, right. I don't even have more flower that was harvested this year. Maybe we're still always getting, checking for stuff. And if a farm reaches out to us, great. But like, it's elusive. It's very elusive.
That's so interesting.
It's very Indiana Jones. Like,
it's like the new superhero of CBD.
Right? But you have to like go through all these obstacles to find it. And yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. And then, we can transition into the benefits if you guys want to. I mean,
before we do that, because I was asked this question yesterday and I was like, wow, I might need to review my answer on this when I was sort of stumbling over my words, is just to really break it down, simplify before moving on. What is a cannabinoid?
Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about the endocannabinoid system real quick, and that'll kind of like pull it all together. So we have a system that we used to think that the brain like ran everything, right? now we know that we have a system that is above all systems, which is the endocannabinoid system, that's responsible for maintaining and sustaining all balance in all of our systems.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to call it the ECS. You can call it the endocannabinoid system. And in that, it's a complex system that sends signals throughout the body. And we have receptors that are all over our bodies and actually are all in each individual cell of each individual part of our body. So we have cells in our hairs everywhere, you guys, teeny tiny cells. There's a mini little ECS in every single one of those cells.
Wow.
And then in those cells are the receptors, CB1 and CB2. And then we have cannabinoids, which are the compounds or the components of these synapses that are going through and then reaching the cannabinoid receptor. So you have these compounds in the body, endogenous cannabinoids that are compatible with these receptors. And then we have phytocannabinoids, which also happen to be compatible with those receptors. We talk about cannabinoid 1 receptor and cannabinoid 2 receptor. Those receive endogenous cannabinoids just as easily as they receive phytocannabinoids, which is what makes the cannabis plant so effective for the human. Mm-hmm. And so we have endocannabinoids, receptors, and enzymes, and those enzymatic processes help that uptake or help that synapses happen and make the compounds effective in the body, which in turn cause balance back into the body, depending on where you are at for dysregulation. So that's in a nutshell.
Right. So that's sort of the reason why CBD can affect us so differently. Is our bodies are always, we're craving balance in different ways. So my body is going to need something totally different as far as a dose and length of time, even with like a certain amount of dose. Some days I notice I forget to take it because it's not, I don't need it necessarily. But that's because I've been on your CBD for a solid, I think almost a year or so, or getting close to that last winter at some point. So that, just to confirm, right? That's like what we're craving, this balance, but that's going to be different for everybody. And that's why sometimes people say CBD makes them excited and alert, and some people are just like, well, I took a nap after I took CBD, and it's pretty much just what you need.
I agree. No, the ECS is not immune to stress, both physiological, emotional stress, getting triggered because of an external influence. So even what's good from person to person may not be great from day to day. And that's, for me, I'm obviously getting this question a lot about CBG and what do I use CBG for? And it's really so incredibly difficult to get our modern society to understand that these 200 cannabinoids that we know of should be all a part of our toolbox. And you pick out the ratios that you need based off of what kind of day, what the weather is, where you're at in your moon cycle, the barometric pressure. I mean, I'm not a doctor, everyone, and I'm not pretending to be a doctor. Nothing I'm going to say during this interview is going to diagnose, treat, or cure any of you. But it's getting us that conversation and that mindset that your intuitive healing takes experimentation. And they are directly connected to each other. The more you want to experiment and go down the path of figuring out what is healing you and who you are in that process is directly going to affect your ability to fully understand the plant. There's a really cool quote that I really want to use, and I don't know where I heard it. I don't know if anybody out there knows who said this, please tell me. I'm not trying to like rip anybody off. You can't define them, you can only know them. And like, that is really how I feel about all the cannabinoids, I think, but definitely getting into these more subtle, non-psychoactive cannabinoids, that's going to be the journey, everyone. Like, we're so used to the very diametric differences between THC and CBD. Like, we can name those differences black and white, name them very easily. CBG and CBD, they're not that, because they're both non-psychoactive, So if you don't have that as your like on or off switch, then how do you really describe them? So that quote, you can't define them, you can only know them. I love that.
That's perfect. That's a great fit for that. Okay, so now that we've got that sort of summarized and figured out so that we're in a great place of understanding, what is the point, I guess, if we're talking to somebody, and maybe this might be two different points, but if somebody's never taken CBD or anything like that, why would they want to jump into a CBG product? And what do you see as the sort of main difference here?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So there have been some really great studies. So a lot of it has been done in Canada. A lot of it's been done in Israel. I would love to cite these if anybody wants them. I get real nerdy and I love reading journals. So if anybody wants to like go down the rabbit hole, but there are
you can send me the link too, so perfect. I have it on hand.
But there's a handful of scientific evidence that continues to be restudied and repeated. So I'm going to name these 5 things. I'm going to cite these journals. But I want you to know that these 5 things are also the 5 things that continue to be studied now that there is some promising results with CBG specifically. Also want to note that these studies, they isolated the one cannabinoid. So again, guys, when we're talking about the tincture that we have is a full spectrum product, meaning it has CBG, CBD, and THC in it, and actually some CBN. These studies specifically just talk about CBG. So again, like anything else, please experiment. Please do your own research before trying a product. But somebody who has never, didn't jump on the CBD bandwagon and they're like, okay, CBG, I'm going to do it. If I wasn't going to do THC, I'm not going to do CBD. I'm going to jump right in the middle of all of it. So we know that it reduces intraocular pressure, but so does cannabis. But we're now realizing through these studies now that the reason that the intraocular pressure is occurring is because of that cannabinoid. So some of it has to do with THC, but they're realizing a lot more can happen, a lot less pressure can happen in the eye with CBG. There have been some really great things about CBG and its ability to decrease spasms in the bowel, like in the colon. So for somebody that's experiencing either colon cancer or IBS, we knew that CBD did that, is an antispasmodic. We know that. CBG is just a more effective antispasmodic. We know that CBD is neuroprotective. Like, we know this. We know that it's been taken off of the banned substance list for the Olympics because of its ability to help when people get concussions, to take it either prior to having a traumatic brain injury or right as soon as one has occurred. And we're realizing that there's some neurodegenerative diseases that CBD is really helping with because of its anti-inflammatory property. One neurodegenerative disorder that we know of or disease is Huntington's disease, which is a more early onset, like Alzheimer's, that can be very closely linked to anxiety. So sometimes in early adults, it comes on as anxiety, but it's actually this early onset Alzheimer's type disease called Huntington's disease. And CBG is showing extreme promise in the neuroprotective nature with people who are early diagnosed, because they think it's an anxiety, and then they take the CBG and they have anti-anxiety effects of it, which are great and desired, but it really happens to be this disease that it's helping with the neuroprotection of a neurodegenerative disease. So that's super badass. Like all cannabis, like you guys have heard of Rick Simpson oil, CBD and THC have been proven to shrink tumors. CBG just happens to be a non-psychoactive tumor-killing cannabinoid. So there's another one that we continue to see. And again, you guys, I want to remind you, these are studies that are being done. It's not with a smokable that happens to have CBG in it. It is an isolated cannabinoid study. So it's just CBG. We just also happen to pile on the the information that we know about THC and CBD. And then the last one, which this one, oh, there's 2 more actually. The last couple here, one is same reasons that we talked about for the IBS, for the antispasmodic. We're seeing huge benefits in bladder disorder. So what would that be like a
bladder infection, kidney
bladder
infection or something?
No, it's more about like the control of being able to pee. Like as we age, it's those muscles are not as tight. So like frequent urination, like they're having a lot of promise because it's slowing down the spasmodic abilities of the bladder as well. Same thing with in the bowels.
Right. So the antispasmodic property sounds like a really key thing, which I know to be really incredible for our feminine bodies and our moon time, as well as having, babies and having that, the pain, the cramping and the afterbirth cramping and all of that. That's where I'm familiar with antispasmodic use. And so it's really cool to hear that this plant is so, or this, isolate is so, amazing in this way.
Mm-hmm. And then here's one of my favorites. Not that shrinking tumors and slowing neurodegenerative processes are not important, but this one is really cool. So I come from a medical background. I used to be a dental hygienist, working in the medical community, slowing down bacteria. Obviously, it's very important. And there's always the one bacteria that is really hard to kill, which is MRSA, which is the like really bad strep bacteria that lives in like air ducts and lives in like hospitals. It's really, really hard to kill. And it's the most important part to note is that it's resistant to antibiotics, most antibiotics. And there's one antibiotic that kills MRSA that's called vancomycin. Which is a crazy, brutal, broad spectrum kills. It's nasty. Like, yeah, I'm not anti-antibiotics, but like biofilm is biofilm, like microbiome is microbiome. You and I have talked at length about this. Like, you don't want to mess with it if you don't have to.
Right.
So here is the jam, though, you guys, is that there's a study that was done in Ontario at McMaster University, and this has been repeatable, that CBG killed MRSA faster than vancomycin. So much, this was so crazy and so repeatable and such breakthrough information about the use of what cannabinoids can be used or what cannabis could be used for, that I mean like this is big news. This is really big news for people. And so like for wound healing, so like that salve that you're using, like for wound healing, it would be a really great, instead of putting somebody on an antibiotic, you could use this topically, or you could smoke it, or you could ingest it and perhaps, eradicate your MRSA. And so, yeah, that's something that you want to talk about, differences of cannabinoids. Like CBD is not doing that, despite the CBD hand sanitizer craze, which just drove me right over the edge.
Oh my gosh, I completely missed that.
You didn't miss anything. And I'm sorry to those who stock their shelves and now you can't. It's shame on you for stocking CBD hand sanitizer or making it as.
Oh, what? Come on.
I mean, like, I get it. Antibacterial, whatever, and real reach, if you ask me. And it just cheapens. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not gonna stay on that.
All right. Well, that was funny. Thank you.
But CBG has actual merit in the realm of slowing down the one particular bacteria of MRSA. So yeah, that's
fascinating. That is really quite a big deal. Wow. Okay.
So then, like in a testimonial world, so again, like we still have to say the word anecdotal. All right. So like, this product has been on the market.
When my wheels are turning, I was like, I think I'm a testimonial. Like that's why I was like, okay.
Totally. But yeah, so I mean, so if for those of you who didn't see Camille's Instagram post, like, do you mind sort of getting into your anecdotal evidence of your own personal experience? As somebody who has been using CBD, so diligently, I'd love to hear, get off to your start of your anecdotal evidence.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I have so much evidence for myself personally. And for my children too. Honestly, I don't give a full tincture size, but I give a few, a small, like a little tiny shot of the CBD every single morning to my children. And emotionally, they were going through a lot, and they're both really sensitive to diet changes and certain things. And so the CBD has been a game changer. I've done that for a handful of months now with them, and it's almost like my 9-year-old will be absolutely melting and will be like, that's the one thing he will take in the moment, because he feels it and he knows. And that's just one of the beautiful things I think about, like, seeing how the medicine works in our children is they have such strong intuition and they know. So for me though, the CBD has been, actually,
we're getting real.
Hold on a second. Well, okay, if you want to see my latest posts and my neck thing and stuff, but I really have to say this morning I had my usual coffee, and then there's like a window of time where the anxiety can bubble up a bit too much in that time of day for me. And if I have like a intense experience or something that triggers the anxiety, it's so fierce. It is so fierce. It literally takes over my entire body. And it's like the pit of anxiety, and it just radiates out, and it's insane. So
I know it well. It well.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Honestly, that happens to me. I don't want to say frequently, so I'm just going to roll with that. But enough where I can really, really tell if something is going to work, and nearly nothing works except for sleeping for me, for the anxiety. When it starts to grow and you're feeling that experience in your body, literally it's like, I have to go to sleep. I will just nap for 5-10 minutes in the middle of the day. I will like put on my headphones and listen to something and try and just get it out of my body. So I did not have time for that today. And I was like, well, we've got this interview this afternoon. And I went for a walk. I did all these things. And then I was like, all right, I'm just going to drink some tea. And I look over, and the new thing I swear it had this little glow to it. I'm not even kidding. Like, maybe it's the sparkly label or the shimmer or something. It's great marketing, but I swear it glowed over in the corner amongst my bottle of lots of supplement, lots of bottles on the shelf, my supplement station. And I was like, oh yeah, I've only tried this once so far, because I was really just curious and was excited to, pick your brain about it. I'm going to do that right now. And I did. And I literally, it was like, whoo, like, it was like maybe within 10 minutes. And I'm serious when I'm saying, like, nothing has ever done that for me before, aside from like literally removing myself to make like a sleep bubble or something of that nature. And that's just a mind-blowing thing, because sometimes we can't really lose a whole day to anxiety. You know what I mean? And we do need these tools. And this is proving to be an incredible tool in this way.
I also feel like I consider myself to be a messenger, right? I don't take any credit for the plant. I simply, I get to be a messenger of the plant. And like I said, I mean, I very much like poo-pooed this cannabinoid, and like, it's, being touted as the next big cannabinoid, all the hubbub around it was just really like unbelievable to me. And I feel like, first of all, I totally know that feeling, had that feeling today, almost canceled or rescheduled this interview. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take this CBG. I'm going to see what this does. And again, I go back to that, like, this mother cannabinoid, and I feel like it helps us harness our power. And I'm not saying like, oh, CBG is only for women. That's not what I'm saying. I just feel like, why did this ratio come to me now? Why did CBG come to me now? I was doing just fine with my CBD and my THC. I wasn't really looking for another relationship. You know what I mean? Like,
That's really
very
funny.
happy in my little bubble. And
you're like, I'm fine
yeah.
sticking with my CBD line.
Well, it's hard enough to understand. And like,
Yeah.
And why did it come to us? Why, you know, when it came to me, I was like, I didn't even try it right off the bat. You know what I mean? I was like, I need something that I can put it right to the test and make sure that I can tell if it's working or not. And that's the part that is, I've been on under a tremendous amount of stress with everything that's going on in this climate. You know, I'm remote learning with my children, you know, all the things. Like, I'm tapped out. I am having those types of reactions that you described, and the type of reaction I had this morning a lot more frequently, really, this month. I don't know if it's the double full moon or if it's just like the sustained chronic stress that I personally am not used to, both professionally and personally, that like, I think that this cannabinoid came to me at a time where I felt like I was ready to try to understand it. I think it came to me to like heal me more. I think that CBD is awesome and is a really great stepping stone, and people aren't going to lose any of the progress that they've made in their healing if they switch to CBD, or if they add CBG or add CBG on to their existing regimen. I think we need a little more support. I know I do. I feel like I need all the support in the world these days. Like it's what was working for me, like a walk or talking to a girlfriend or eating a really clean diet. Like, I've been doing all of that stuff, you know, and it helps tremendously to keep your endocannabinoid system balanced. But I personally needed something more. And I feel like that's another thing I can like articulate for those who are like, what's the difference? Is that I really feel like CBG is for more severe endocannabinoid deficiency. I think if you are experiencing cancer, you're definitely at more of a dysregulation. If you're experiencing long-term chronic stress, repeat chronic stress, like we are, you know, that would be considered a more severe endocannabinoid deficiency, because we're experiencing more severe stress right now. We just are. You know, one big difference I have noticed, and this is what I used it like from the get-go, and didn't have a lot of experience with using it during the day, was that CBD was helping me sleep, but it wasn't really keeping me asleep. Again, because like my body's stress levels were overriding even the balance that was trying to be restored by the CBD therapy. For me, you guys, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I was still waking up. And so that is a big difference, is that when I take CBD, cannabidiol, I notice that for sleep, I notice that I go from being in my head, all the thoughts about what I'm going to do tomorrow, all the things that I did today, all the conversations I had yesterday, that goes into my body. And I feel that process happening where it goes into my body, and I'm in my body now, out of my head, and then I fall asleep. With CBG, and this was actually quite alarming to me the first time I took it. It was like I took it and I woke up, it was morning. Like it was like done, out. Like, I've never taken Ambien, but I would guess like that's what Ambien is like, where you're just like lights out. Like, so that's the biggest difference for me. I was like, whoa, did I even sleep? I just like blinked my eyes and it was morning. So for those who have not used a sleep aid, I would caution you to maybe go slow for using it for sleep, because I just like took a half a dropper, took 25 milligrams, and I probably really only needed to take like half that dose, you know?
Wow, that's so fascinating. So I want to dive in a little bit on the CBG, is there something about it that also has a like pain relief factor like the CBD, or is that more of our CBD go-to? Because that's honestly what I use CBD a lot for, as well as it's in like the body care and the face serum and all of that. And so much topical. Are we able to receive CBG topically in the same way? And is it also a pain relief thing?
So yes, I feel like internally it works faster. So like for a headache, I feel like taking CBG, cannabidiol, it works faster. But again, it could be because that headache is related to my stress level. I also have taken CBD for a headache and it's worked great. I just feel like right now it's a faster relief than with CBD. And then on the topical level, that I love the Medicool. That is my go-to for pain relief, and that's typically what I'm using a topical CBD product for, or just a topical cannabis product is for pain, straight up for pain. In skincare is a different thing, and we'll go down that track in a second. But like a high concentration topical, I want my muscle pain to go away or my menstrual cramping to go away ASAP. And in that regard, I don't know if it's like the placebo effect or the fact that we mixed it with peppermint and birch and the menthol crystals, but that just works so instantly for me. With the CBG balm, it's vetiver and bergamot with the CBD or CBG. And I like the pain relieving properties. I just like a tingle. So I do feel like there's the pain relieving properties. They're just as effective. In my opinion, I can't discern which one is better pain relief wise. I just know that I love that extra tingle. So for me, the CBG, if you don't like a tingle or you don't like a menthol pepperminty smell, like I'd probably recommend the CBG or the OG balm, which is a lavender one. And also like, you know, for those who don't like lavender, I mean, a lot of women or a lot of like, you know, massage therapists and estheticians, they're so sick of lavender, or like some men in the world, like don't want to smell like lavender.
I'm pretty tired of lavender at this point.
That vetiver and bergamot, we chose it intentionally because vetiver is like another like amazing herb, has a crazy long taproot. If you've never seen a picture of vetiver before, it's a grass. It's a straight up grass. It's and the root, like that root is like what, and all of it's used, and it's also bioaccumulator, just like hemp. It's used in a lot of shoreline, so it's like a super strong weed that anchors soil so it doesn't erode, which I love that grounding origin story of the plant. And you definitely sense that smell and that grounding energy in vetiver, which I love about the balm. And vetiver is like one of the most used essential oils like in any high-end perfume. So when you smell it, it's like it's unlike anything you smell. Like, it's nothing else smells like vetiver.
Nothing else smells like vetiver. You know, I'm like so giddy and excited that you put this in here. I love vetiver and bergamot actually, but especially vetiver, it's like one of my longtime favorite scents.
And it's like, it's lavender and the like properties of lavender, but like to the nth degree. I feel like vetiver is like the more mature version where yes, it's relaxing, but it's also like very grounding. It's an anti-anxiety. It's, you know, an antidepressant. Like that's vetiver. That's like without putting it into all the other beautiful botanicals that are in that balm. Like that's just the vetiver. And then the bergamot, the same thing. It like promotes your feminine powers and it enhances your intuition. I mean, like these all sound like very like hippie foofy things, but like try it and you see, I mean, it all really compiles the energy. Like we didn't just choose vetiver bergamot because they smell good. Like they really matched perfectly with CBG. So I'm super happy with the way it turned out. And so far, you know, both the CBG tincture and the balm, I had no idea that the world was ready for another cannabinoid as I was. I was very nervous and was like, I got to have all this research and I got to have all this storytelling so I can explain to people what's so great about this product. People are just like, give it to me. It's from my favorite plant. Like, so we're really
bring it on.
So I'm really pleased how well it's being received. And I'm also really kind of nervous and sad about it because like we don't have it forever. Like that's the part that's like people are going to get this window into this other part of the plant that they definitely should include in their toolbox. And I don't get to like continue them on that journey with our own products. So that's a little disheartening, but you know, hopefully it's not forever. But yeah. But that's another thing. Be wary, you guys out there. If you see these big, giant, CBD national brands that have tons and tons of CBG in the product, like, do your due diligence. Yeah.
And you can go back and listen to our first episode of CBD, and we really broke down the quality amongst other companies and what the milligrams really are all about. Yeah. Is there anything else so just riveting and exciting about CBG that you want to mention?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's all right. I mean, it's only human to want to capture the elusive. Oh, and so I want to go back to like the taste that you recognize that there was a taste difference.
Like, I'm going to have a little bit.
Yeah. So like any agricultural product, each crop, each, flower, each strain all have different variations. We dilute our extract with organic hemp seed oil. So that's not going to change that. Yes, that's an agricultural product, but like you're pretty used to the taste of hemp seed oil. It's the youngness it's the immaturity of when the plant was harvested that you're tasting, because it's not maturing. So the leaves, the flower, like all of that is more mature for our CBD product. We're harvesting it much later because we want the CBD percentage to be as concentrated as possible. That's not the case with the plant. So you're tasting a younger plant is the reason there's a taste difference.
Right. Wow. Okay.
Which is so awesome that you are so tuned into, you must be a super taster, like tuned into the subtleties of the taste.
Oh, I'm like an annoying super taster. I'm sorry to say that about myself. I'm like, oh wait, I am very
Shout out
sensitive.
To the super tasters of the world. No,
we're not annoying. I am a super taster and a super smeller, and I can smell anything. It's just the weirdest and slightly annoying thing. And it's like, what I can tell if somebody like hugged someone else with some different type of detergent, and
totally.
There it is. It's on. So
that's awesome, and I love that. Yeah, there's an explanation for that, which is so cool. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Congratulations on this new product release. And
thank you, Mother Cannabis.
Thank you, Mother Cannabis, for so many reasons. And what a joy it is to get to I'm so excited about CBG. Yeah.
As we should be. Yeah, me too. No, not to say that CBD and THC don't have their place, but I'm super excited that my mind is definitely opening so much to what really the true possibilities there are, So we'll see. Time will tell.
Yep. I love it.